Hello guys and welcome to another video. Before we get started with it, I want to say the next. I am not a financial planner nor a financial advisor. I am not FCA approved. I'm not approved by any institution that allows me to give financial nor investment advices. Nothing mentioned in this video should be considered investment advice or guidance. Everything shown, talked, and explained is for pure and only educational purposes. The risk is on your own hands. Enjoy. Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to today's video. In here we'll be talking about the process of being funded or getting funded based on my experience, and not only my experience regarding funded programs, right, but also my experience in the forex market, and well, basically a couple of things that I like to mention regarding everything that is surrounding funding a funding program, right? So I'm not sure what I'll do here. I do have to talk first about something, well, what to do before buying a challenge. But in the background, you'll probably be watching a video of me backtesting or something like that, so you don't get bored by just watching a white screen, right? Because I'll be doing some drawings later. But basically, yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So the first thing that we'll talk about is what to do before buying a challenge, which in my opinion is one of the most important things to do, because passing a challenge I think is actually easy. The only problem is actually getting to the point where you should buy a challenge, right? Not before, not after, but the right moment, right? So first of all, I think you need a good strategy. You need a strategy that you've used for some time and that you basically feel comfortable with, that has proven to work in the forex market, right? Not only that has proven to work, but that you feel comfortable with, that you've used for a couple of weeks, months. We'll talk about time in a few minutes, right? But basically, you need a good strategy that works, that is adjusted, or that you know that works the way you want it to work. And what I mean with that is basically that you can't go in with a strategy that you don't feel comfortable with because you have to trade in lower time frames and you can't be in the New York session or the London session, right? If you can't use the strategy that you want to use, hold on. All right. So if you have a strategy that works but you can't use because you can't be, as an example, based on our strategy, you can't be at the London session or the New York session, and you want to trade higher time frames and you haven't gotten used to that, then it's better to try and find either another strategy or try to find a way to adapt that strategy to the type of trading you're looking for, right? If you're looking to trading higher time frames, I've shown that this exact strategy that I teach in the lower time frames is applicable to any time frame. You could trade in the daily chart, you could trade in the 4-hour based on the 15 minutes. There's tons of things that you can do with the strategy that I trade in the lower time frames, such as the 1 minute. You can apply it on the 15, you can apply it in any time frame, right? Also, you can use the concepts in other ways that I maybe have not shown you because I do not know of them, or I just don't find them consistent enough for me to work, right? There are tons of things that you can do when you have a strategy, right? Because the strategy works, right? And you can apply it however you want it to, however you want, that will basically feel good for you, or that will basically work the way you want it to work, right? So that said, that's first the strategy, and now we go to consistency. So paying a challenge after 2 weeks of consistency isn't good enough. You don't know how you'll behave under pressure. You don't know if price was just gentle, between quotes, with you, because there has been times where, as an example, there has been weeks or maybe a couple of days that price action was just really clear. As an example, yesterday's trade. I think Tuesday had a really clean trade as well. Monday had a really clean trade as well. This week has been wonderful, right? So having a good week, having a good couple of days doesn't really mean that you already know how to use this strategy, or that you have mastered the strategy. You're probably nowhere close, right? You may be, but having such a short time frame of basically experience of practicing and using that strategy doesn't really give you much information on how really adapted you are to that strategy, right? So believe me that I know how it feels to discover that you're not consistent when you're not consistent in in the middle of a challenge, right? So I know you want to be funded as soon as possible. I get it. I'm there, right? But here's my story. I think this year I wasted somewhere around $400 on challenges, right? And believe me that in my country, $400 could be considered to be somewhere around two salaries, right? Because $400, sorry, could be considered two salaries, right? So $400 are not easy for me to get because I don't really have a job. I do have a job, but it's not a job that pays well, right? But it's a job that, well, I has provided me with enough money to, as an example, buy challenges, right? But in these challenges, I can't really say I have achieved much, but experience, which is experience that I probably would have been able to get without wasting money, right? Because the first challenge that I got was on funding talent, and at that point I felt good enough. But the moment that I bought that challenge was because I had maybe two trades. I spotted two trades, which at that time I was actually trading higher time frames. So as an example, those trades got to, I think I got a 30-hour trade, right? So 30-hour in one trade, and then I think I got a 20-hour. Now, those were really good analysis. Those were really good trades. But what was the issue or the problem or the mistake basically that I did with both of these trades? First of all, they were good analysis. I analyzed them correctly. I even remember that this was when I joined Phantom. I think on the first 2 weeks, I just spent that time grinding and going through the content and everything. Then I started analyzing, and in the first analysis that I did, basically, I got a trade. And I got a trade that basically worked out amazingly, right? And that gave me so much confidence, not only in this strategy, but on myself, that made me feel already quite good enough to get into a challenge, right? But still not good and strong enough per se, right? So I was a little bit, I had the mindset in a way that I knew that I wasn't really prepared for a challenge, right? But still went for it, right? So I had that trade, then I had the 30 and 40, the 30 and 20-hour trade. And the mistake that I did with those trades is that I did take them in a demo, but both of them were closed somewhere around 7-hour or 5-hour. So that means that I did analyze a really good trade, but I didn't have the psychology to hold those trades, right? Both of them, I do remember that got to target, which was really comforting, or was really good per se. But as I said, it gave me a confidence that I shouldn't have had at that time. And well, what I did was went for the challenge, and what I realized made the challenge. First of all, the first mistake that I made was that I changed the strategy in a way, because of that when I actually left Phantom because I wasn't able to afford the next month. They actually changed. It's not that they changed the strategy, but they started trading on the lower time frames. And I say, oh, I want to do that because that's better. Not better per se, but the thing is that lower time frames mean that you don't have to hold trades for so long, and you can get really good hours within short time frames, right? So I changed the strategy as soon as I got into the challenge, so that was already mistake one, right? I wasn't able to apply the strategy per se, and I was really already trying to change the strategy. So I'm gonna skip everything that happened in the middle because that's basically the first 7 months of the year was me in that challenge in funding talent, getting retry after retry after retry until I actually got funded, which I'm gonna say that I was probably really lucky because when I get funded, I almost blew the account, right? Then funding talent disappears, so not much to do about that. But the thing is that I would have preferred not wasting those $150, I think it was, for that challenge, but just use those months to continue to study, continue to find that consistency that I needed before getting into a challenge, instead of being worried about getting the target, getting back to break even, or getting to the profit target, etc. Right? So Where was I? Because I have some script, but I usually tend to talk. So basically, that's a after uh, after funding talent. After funding talent, I spent 1 month away from challenges. It got a little bit consistent and got into MFF. And this is very recent. I think it was 2 months ago, or three maximum. Three, yeah, 3 months, yeah, because it was on September 20, well, 30, somewhere around there. And on this challenge, I started well, but then started losing money. The challenge was down 8%. My account was at $9,200. And that was, I don't want to say it was the first week, I think it was the two. So at the second week, I was down to that. And funny enough, on the second week, I started analyzing, I started to realize what I was doing wrong. And this is when I realized that the going for risk entries as I was not really that smart. And that's when I actually changed to, well, the current strategy that I have, which is just looking for confirmation entries in important areas, right? Which is a pretty consistent strategy. So that $9,200 account, I had 1 week to get back up to break even. And in that week, I had all the way up to Friday, right? And I started really well. I had $9,200 in that account, and I had to get it back to 10K so I could ask for the retry, right? And I think it was Monday was already like a 2% or something like that. Tuesday was a 3%. Wednesday was nothing. And keep in mind that I had to achieve target on Thursday. Thursday got there, and I needed one trade. I said 2 plus 3 was 5, so I needed 3% profit. 3% profit is 6R, something really achievable. So I said, I need 6R. That is all. Now, there are two problems with that. It's the fact that, first of all, you have the need to get to that target, right? So in your head, you're going to force trades by nature, first of all. And second of all, having the need to make, well, I already said that. What was the other thing? I'm not going to remember, so I'm just going to skip that. But basically, what happened that day is that the first trade was a loss. And that affected me psychologically amazingly. You have no idea how it affected me. And what I decided to do was get into lower time frames, and whenever I saw a strong reaction to one side, I will place a trade. I will market execute it. Right? And basically trying, I ended up losing a 5%, which is the max daily drawdown. And at that moment, I realized that I was not strong psychologically. I was not strong enough psychologically, right? Because the strategy proved to work out on Monday, on Tuesday, Wednesday. I think on Wednesday I actually missed out on a trade. But yeah, that doesn't matter. And Thursday proved me that I was not ready psychologically, right? So what happens is that after losing that, I went out for a run, came back home, took a shower, went back to the charts, started analyzing, realized that there were no trades so far, and it was 11 a.m., so it was still a time where I could have traded, right? And what happens later is that a trade forms. I was analyzing the charts while doing other stuff, right? At this point, it wasn't really interested in watching the charts, but I was looking at them, looking what happened, and a trade formed with the 3 basic steps that I've taught you, and the trade worked out amazingly and got down to 8R. So keep in mind the fact that I've again begun the day with a loss. I needed 7R instead of 6. So that 8R would have given me the profit that I needed to pass the challenge, right? So yeah, that was a crazy day, and today I laugh. That day I almost cried. it was such a bad feeling knowing that if I would have just kept my cool the way that I did on Monday, the way that I did on Tuesday, I would have managed to get back to break even and I wouldn't have to worry about getting the money again to buy the challenge. Right? So that was my recent experience. And now I'm on a challenge which I began by losing. I began losing like a 2% because I forced some trades and got back up to break even, and now I'm back. I'm up 4%. So I'm 4% away from target, and I'm really happy about that. And I know that I'm psychologically strong. I know that the strategy is really well, and I kind of have to thank you and everyone that follows me for that, because well, the fact that I've improved this past few months and well, this past few weeks as well really shows that teaching others or trying to teach others does help in improve your own self, right? So yeah, just wanted to add that small thing. So what would have been better, basically, instead of spending those months on trying to pass a challenge, trying to find ways to come back up to break even, or trying to find ways to achieve the target, I think it would have been much better for me to not have that pressure in the back of my head and basically just be grinding and trying to improve the strategy, trying to find what the fuck am I doing wrong, to try and find how to fix it, to then try and find the way to apply things correctly, avoiding the mistakes that I was making, and basically getting finally the consistency that I needed. And that's when I developed the strategy. That's when I started teaching. That's when this course began, and that's when I took the challenge, which, as I said, is going quite well for now, and I'm really happy about that. So instead of basically not only losing money but losing time due to that pressure of trying to pass a challenge, trying to pass a verification, trying to get funded, would have been much better spent trying to find a way to make my strategy work, right? And well, that's something that I didn't really realize till well a couple of months later. And well, this is where we are right now, right? And yeah, I also don't think it entirely relays on time. Right? It's more about you, about the trader, about how easy it is for you to follow your trading plan, how consistent have you been, how have you had days where you missed on clear opportunities and forced trades, how to feel psychologically in a trade, have you consistently looked for the same setups over and over again, etc. Basically, right? I recommend a full month of you each week achieving 10-hour gain, if the market allows it, of course. But basically, a full month of you trading consistently, looking for 10-hour weekly. And in this time, you should prove yourself that you know how to apply the strategy, you don't force trades to achieve a target, you don't fear of missing out, you're patient and waiting for trades, etc. Right? You have to prove yourself, and you need to see consistency in everything that you do regarding Forex. Not only in your execution, but in your analysis. And not only in your analysis and your execution, but also on how you manage your trade, how you manage your losses, how do you manage the post-market routine and stuff, right? It's not just knowing the strategy and how to apply it, but also applying it in a consistent way for weeks and seeing that you can do that. Right? As an example, before I took the challenge, or before I started the challenge, I set myself, okay, so I want to achieve an 8% gain this week. And the next week I want to achieve a 4%. And the next week I want to achieve an 8%. And if those 3 weeks are as expected, right, achieving those targets, then the next I'll begin the challenge. Right? So what I ended up doing is that the first week I didn't achieve the 8%, and what I realized is that I would have been able to do that, but what stopped me was that having been so close, I just felt terrified of taking losses, which is very dumb because you're trading really well, right? And out of nowhere you're stopping because you're scared of taking losses. If you continue to do what you've been doing to achieve that 6% profit so far, then you should consistently continue to do that until you achieve the 8% you're looking for. Right? It's not really that difficult. So, next week I completed the 8% that I needed. I did the 4% as well. And the next week is when I started the challenge. I didn't do the 8% as I promised myself I would do, but I ended up doing it. I did find some consistency. I didn't do the month, I'd say, and of full consistency, but I did see that I was trading really well, that I was being really patient, that I was applying everything as I had to. I do think that I did really well, and I don't regret taking the challenge, honestly. And thanks to the course and the people that have supported me lately, I am able to buy another challenge in case I fail this one, and that does that does basically take away some pressure that I would have felt by having just one opportunity, having just one chance, which is something that I'll talk about in a minute. So I think that's pretty much it about consistency, and I think that's a huge and important section of something that you have to do before taking a challenge, and that's pretty much it about that. So what we'll do now is we'll get to the money section. And money section sounds weird, but it's basically what I just said. So I recommend saving for 2 or 3 challenges before buying into the first challenge, right? Not because you'll need it, not because you'll fail it, and it's better to have the money ready for that, but this way you wouldn't feel the pressure of it being your only chance, right? So of course this will depend, because if you are a person that basically is getting into Forex because you want to get out of your 9 to 5, and you're already working, you'll probably have the money to get a challenge, at least one per month, right? But the thing is, it's to have money saved, and that this money, if you lose it, you don't really care, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. And the more things that are bad and can affect us in any way when we are in a challenge, if possible, it's better to completely avoid them or find ways to fix them before entering a challenge, right? That's just kind of obvious, right? Because you don't want to do something when you have something in the background kicking you or hitting you, right? Saying this is going to happen, or this is bad, or this is that, or this is this, right? Having the opportunity to buy more than one challenge will just relieve you of that pressure of it being your only chance. If you only have money for one challenge, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you have that in your background, right? When you really shouldn't, because one challenge is the only thing that you need. If you've taken enough time to get there, and if you have shown yourself consistency in any way possible, then in every way possible, it's pretty much easy to pass a challenge. As I said at the beginning, in my opinion, it's easy to pass a challenge, but you have to be ready before taking it. If you take the challenge 2 weeks after getting into Forex, you're probably going to lose it, right? Because it's not that the challenge is easy. It's easy if you take it when you're ready, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now we're going to pass on to the what to do during a challenge. And for that, we'll use this drawing, which I have realized has a mistake, and it's that I didn't include the losing section of the Fibonacci. Because we'll need it, because in here I'll be talking about several things, but basically mostly scenarios that you can encounter, right? Yeah, I don't want to do that. Minus 0.5. Minus 0.75. Okay, we'll use that as our full loss. Otherwise, I'm gonna go crazy with this. Oh, okay. It didn't select that. Yeah, no, it didn't. Is that good? It's a tiny bit lower than supposed, but fuck it. Okay, so what is this drawing? This drawing basically shows you the time you have, right? The time you have to complete a challenge, and the amount you have to fulfill, right? Being depending on what you take, I recommend taking FTMO. I'm currently in MFF, but that's because I didn't really have the money to get to the FTMO, which I did later. I was just not patient enough to wait for the course to get enough sales to get to FTMO, which is something I kind of regret, but MFF seems fine, and I do have the money to go to FTMO if I want it, but just not gonna worry about that for now, right? So we're going to hide this because it's gonna be a little bit of a pain in the ass. Well, a distraction, not a pain in the ass. So you can encounter hundreds of scenarios, but there are some that I can help you with based on experience. I believe you should know how to handle these very specific situations that we'll go through, right? So the first will be, let's suppose you, let me actually make this a little bit thicker so it looks better. Let's suppose you start your challenge, right? And the first trade is a loss. Oh, I forgot to add this. So depending on what you are going for, whether it is FTMO, let's do FTMO because that's probably the best example we can do. You need to achieve a 10% target within 30 days, right? I hate drawing. Right, that's the 10% you need, and you have a maximum of a 10% loss, I think. Yeah, 10% loss, and well, daily of 5%, which is daily maximum loss is something that we shouldn't really worry about, right? Because we're not going to be trading that much. Okay, so let's say you begin the challenge losing, which is completely possible. And in most cases, I've begun my challenges losing. We can try as hard as we want to not get losses. I have realized that there are ways you can avoid taking losses on a pretty good way, and by pretty good way I mean you are just looking for the most confluences you can find, or waiting for price to get to the most important areas possible, and that's honestly the best way you can do, the best thing that you can do to avoid losses. But even if we wait for hundreds of confluences before a trade, now let's stop that. 100 for confluences before you take a trade, you are still going to take losses because it's just how the market works, right? So even if you wait for, as I said, good confluences, even if the trade looks as clean as possible, you will encounter losses. Now, the thing is that the most confluences that it has, or the better the price looks, the better or the higher probability the trade has of working out, right? So basically at this point, what we basically do is try to find the best trades that we can, right? To try to avoid losses, because we all hate losing, right? I do think that losing gives you more experience or a better chance to learn than a win, right? Because in a win you did everything perfectly, you could have seen even better details, right? And it's good looking at the wins because it makes you realize what works out the most. But basically I have this feeling, and I kinda have this understanding that when you take a loss, it's more likely for you to learn more than if you did it when you take a win, basically, right? So yeah, let's just get to this. Let's suppose you start losing. You take a loss. Let's suppose your first day you take just one loss, and then the market didn't give clear opportunities, or you missed out on a loss. On a good trade that worked out. That's not really good, because this is when you begin your challenge. You begin your challenge by taking a loss, and you missed out on a really good opportunity. That sucks, right? Let's suppose the next day you miss out on an opportunity, so you don't trade. The next day you take 2 losses, right? And the next day you you take another 2 losses, right? And then you take a small win, something like this, right? Let's suppose there was a 2% gain or something like that. But then you continue to lose and lose. You started the second week losing, you're gonna trade a day, you lose. And honestly, at each step of the challenge, you should be looking at your trades and realizing what are the mistakes that you're making in each loss and what are the things that you're doing right on each win. Right? That's first of all. This is not only on challenges, this is everywhere. You have to do that every time that you take a trade. You have to realize what you did right and what you did wrong about that exact trade and about that exact day, right? So let's suppose you realize, okay, so this is something that I'm doing wrong. I'm forcing trades, I'm taking risk entries. So I'm going to wait a little bit more for better confluences. Let's see what happens then. Suppose the first day you don't trade, you don't find anything that looks good, and then you take a win. Really good win that gets you really close to break even. This is something really good as well, because this shows that each loss is really little, right? You could have taken 6 or 5 losses to get down to this, but this win covered for 4 or 5 losses, right? That's the good thing about risk management. So this trade basically covered for most of our losses except for the first. I suppose that's the way it is. It's a really good trade. You're feeling happy. I suppose that you then don't trade for the rest of week 2. Week 3, you begin with a beautiful win that gives you 25% into your challenge, right? 25% of 10% is basically 2.5% profit up, right? Sorry, didn't mean to do that. What will be my recommendation here? You are on week 3. You still have, hold on, let's actually do this like this. Trade week 2. First day of week 3, you make this profit, right? And you still have this whole week. So you started the challenge really bad, right? Being fully honest, you started the challenge pretty bad. And now you've managed to not only get back to break even, but make a pretty good profit, right? I shouldn't be doing this example actually. Yeah, let's do it like this. So what would I recommend doing if you start losing and you lose a high amount, right? Because if you start losing and you say, let's say you take 1 loss, then you don't trade, then another loss, 3 losses or something like that, and then you start looking at profits, I wouldn't see this as the example, right? But basically, if you took a lot of losses and then you started trading well, then if you get back up to break even, I would recommend that you stop trading on that account, at the very least for 1 week. So what would I recommend doing here on this week, right, week 3, is continue to trade the way that you were doing, but on demo, right? Test out, realize if there's something that you're continuing to do wrong. But if, as an example, if you take a loss and then you take another win and another win and another win and basically do something like this, and you basically pass a challenge on this 3rd week, you're probably going to regret that you stopped trading. But why would I still recommend this? Because if you take a loss, you go back below break even, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna hate it because you had the opportunity to later on take a retry, right? Begin from 0, and not only that, but you would have had again this 4 weeks of opportunities, right? So I have had situations where I started losing a lot, got back up to break even, and what I did immediately as price got back up to break even is send the email to ask for a retry and to start it the next week if I felt prepared, right? If I felt prepared. So basically, I recommend this whole week to be trading in demo, but if you see that you are being profitable and you could have even passed your challenge on week 3, then on week 4 continue to trade, right? That would have meant that this week is not traded, right? And then here you begin. But another recommendation, this is your break-even point. If you start seeing that you take a loss, you don't trade, you take a loss, and you're getting close to that break-even mark, stop trading. Just let the retry happen, begin from scratch. Because at this point, if you go back down to break-even, or below break-even, then you will have in a few days to get back up to break-even at the very least, right? So that would make sense to have that pressure of a few days needing that profit, right? So the two recommendations on this scenario is that if you start losing a lot, has to be a lot, and you manage to get back up to break even, then stop trading for a week. Test out how you're trading, and if you are doing really great and you realize that the mistakes you were making are fixed, then what you do here on the next week is you start trading again, but being very careful. Do not go below your stop loss mark, your break even mark, because you can lose your challenge because of a stupid decision, right? So as an example, as I said, each time that I started losing a lot and got back up to break even, I will stop trading and wait for the retry. It's the best thing that you can do. Now, does that mean that you were going to lose your money here? No, not necessarily. As you can see, thing is that, as an example, this was just 2 or 3 trades maybe. They got you back up to break even and a 2.5% profit. But basically, this could have been easily a target. Maybe the next trade would have been a trade to take profit and would have passed the challenge. Definitely possible. But it's preferable to be careful. Instead of losing your account, just take some time. Analyze if you're actually trading well, or you just either got lucky or price action was really clear. Just make sure that you're good to go before you continue to trade. Right? Because at this point you've gotten yourself another opportunity, a second opportunity. Right? So it's better to not lose out on that one. Be patient and make sure that every mistake that you are doing here is fixed. Right? So demo trade this week. If you actually manage to get some profits and you get to target, or if you don't get to target but you continue to trade well, on the 4th week, continue to trade. Right? Just continue to trade, and hopefully you get to the 10% if you're enough TMO, or 8% if you are on MFF, right? And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it on this scenario. So basically, is the recommendation here: if you start losing a lot and you get back up to break even, then just get the retry. Take the rest of the time that you have until the retry to study and realize what you're doing wrong, what you were doing right, how can you continue to avoid the losses, not the losses, but the mistakes, and how you can continue to do well as you were doing to get back out to break even, right? That's pretty much it on that one. I'm getting really tired. Let's continue to the next one. The next scenario is you start winning, make mistakes, stop before break even. So suppose you take a loss as soon as you begin, but then you take a win, you take a loss, take a win, you take a loss, then you don't trade, you take a loss, and a loss. The last 3 days of the week basically were losses. This is your break-even mark. I suppose week 2 begins, and you take a trade, you missed out on a really good opportunity, and you take a loss. Right now, you're just about break even. You started well, but now you're making mistakes. Right? You are failing to continue to make the profits that you made on the first 2 days of the week. Right? So, just looking at it from that perspective, what I will do, probably here before this loss, if I missed out on a really good opportunity, it means that there's something that I'm missing out on, there's something that I'm doing wrong, basically, right? So what would I prefer doing just at this point? Start realizing, what did I do right here? And what am I doing wrong here? Right? What are the mistakes? Am I taking risk entries? Am I forcing trades? Am I trading in significant areas? Am I taking CEs on areas that are far away and that are now insignificant for price? What is it that has made me lose on, a 5% profit? That means that you've taken probably... The problem with this is that the drawings, I was probably talking about 4 or 5 losses, not a 5% loss, right? But let's suppose this were 10 losses. In just, 3 days will be a little bit impossible. But let's suppose it's worth 10 losses. At this point, I will stop because I'm not break even. Right? I would have liked to stop before getting so close to break even, because at this point, if I take a loss, I'm below break even. Right. So now you have still 3 weeks, complete 3 weeks, that you have to say, okay, at this point I can ask for a refund. Sorry, not a refund, a retry. Right. So let's take advantage of this time. Let's see what I've been doing wrong. These 2 weeks you spend demo and trying to find ways to fix the mistakes that you were doing, right? You realize, okay, so I was taking a lot of risk entries, I was not waiting for liquidity, or liquidity was above my areas. I've been taking a very specific pattern that has not been working out, so I'm going to stop trading that pattern. And on this week in the demo, right, this is all demo, let's suppose you took another loss and then you started winning, right? You made some really good profits. You took through 2 or 3 trades that basically got you back up to some really good profits on demo. What will be my recommendation on week 4? You have 2 ways to approach this. If you're feeling really well in your trading, then be really conservative, wait for really clean trades, and take a trade on the 4th week, right? But being really conservative, right? Being really conservative, because one loss is not only going to be just one loss, but this loss is right now losing you your retry, and you will have this psychological power of yourself saying, okay, so I had the opportunity of a retry and now I blew it. I should have waited for the retry and then began from 0, right? Now, if you're lucky enough or your analysis is really good and you basically do a good trade, now you have all of this space to take losses. If you take 1 loss, 2 losses, 3 losses, 4 losses, you say, okay, so at this point I'm starting trading, I will for the retry, right? You just wait for the retry, you get the retry before starting again. Of course, you check that you're doing everything all right, etc., right? But if you begin with the loss, it's not just one loss, it's a loss that is making you to lose your retry, and it's something that you could have avoided, right? So you have 2 ways for doing it. If you're feeling really good about this 2 weeks in demo, then go for it. Take your chances, take the risk. The person that doesn't risk is not going to win money, never. In this market, you have to risk to make money, otherwise there's nothing to do. If you don't want to risk it, each trade has a risk, right? This loss had a risk, this win had a risk, and each works out as it has to work out, right? Give me a second. Okay, so those are the 2 things you can do. You're patient, you wait for the retry, you get the retry, and you start from scratch. You got 4 weeks to achieve the 10% or the 8%. You have time, right? You have time. Or you risk it, you go for that 4th week, trying to achieve, of course you would have to believe that you can make the 10%, or this that you can get close, right? If you can get close, then that's great. 10% in a week is definitely achievable, but it's a little bit hard. 8% is just 2 trades at 8R, risking a 0.5%. Right? It's definitely possible. This week, did I make an 8% this week? Yeah. Well, without no, because the losses, right? Because they took a 3% on Tuesday, 3% here, and a 2% today, so that's an 8%. But I took 2% loss in this one, right? So yeah, where were we? So 4th week, my personal recommendation: don't trade it. Don't trade it. Spend it on demo. Keep trying to refine the problems, mistakes that you were doing. Take the retry, and if you're doing really great, the next week you start, and you're probably going to have a much cleaner experience, right? You're probably going to have something like this: take a few losses and start winning. Keep in mind that with risk to reward ratio, a couple of trades are needed to get that. As I said, 8R is just 2 trades. 5R is, well, you need 16R to achieve this, right? You need 16R, so 3 trades at 5R, well, 2 trades at 5R and 1 at 6, right? So it's really not that hard. And with this strategy like this that has higher risk to reward ratios, I mean, in here, how much did this one take? 7.58R in 40 minutes. yesterday was 15 hours and 40 minutes. But you could advance the challenge with that, um, with that, with that trade. Now let's get to the next. You start winning, continue winning, and pass. That's pretty much. Just start winning. Start winning, continue winning, right? And you take a few losses along the way. Nothing impossible. You pass it. What is it that you do now? You've passed the challenge. You have to go to the verification phase. Even if you're taking wins or if you're taking losses, always revisit your trades. Always realize what were the steps to it. What led you to take those wins? What led you to take those losses? How were you feeling outside of your trading? Was there something wrong at your house? Did you fight with your girlfriend? Did you fight with your family? Is there something external that affected you on this trade? Is there something internal? Did you make a mistake on the analysis? Did you miss out on liquidity? Anything that could, in the future, compound as confluences to why you're taking multiple losses, then it's better, right? Because if you're taking 10 losses here, you go back and realize what you did wrong. Let's suppose you take 10 losses. 10 losses, a 5% loss here, right? If you were doing the analysis in each of these trades, then at the 10th trade you realize, okay, I've been taking losses. So let's see, when did I begin taking losses? Here. Okay, what did I do wrong here? I took when there was no liquidity available. I took risk entry. Okay, so that's something. Let's see what I did on this one. On this one, liquidity was missing, but I did take a CE. On this one, liquidity was missing, and I took a risk entry. What is it that you're realizing with just 3 trades? With just 3 trades, that you're missing out on liquidity and you're taking risk entries. Then you continue to analyze that, and what you realize is that this was a risk entry, this was a risk entry, this was a confirmation entry with no liquidity, this was a risk entry, right? You're realizing that your common mistake is taking risk entries, right? And so what you do, okay, let's not take risk entries. If you would have not taken risk entries here, you would have had only this loss, because that's the only loss that you took with a confirmation entry. If you would have waited for liquidity on each trade, let's suppose this, and this were not losses. So you would have taken only 3 losses by just fixing 2 mistakes, right? It might be insignificant at the beginning because, okay, so this trade, I did this, and this. But when you have 10 trades that have worked out and just 3 that haven't, and you realize that on those 3, liquidity was missing, or you took a risk entry, and in the 10 that you won, confirmation entry was there, the liquidity was there, the impulse was there, everything was there, then what do? You stop taking risk entries, you start waiting for the confirmation entry and waiting for the liquidity to be formed, and you have a higher probability. It's as simple as that. This is not something I really wanted to talk about here, but, well, it's something that you have to know, and, well, you should know already. I think I've talked about this. Oh yeah, I did on the Notion process, I think. So, if you start winning and you continue to win, analyze how are you doing that. It's not that taking wins is not that you're doing everything perfect. It's not that there's nothing to improve. There's always something to improve. There will always be something to improve. So just continue to analyze what you're doing. Continue to do everything as you should. You should find ways to improve over and over and over. It's not about changing the strategy completely, but it's realizing that certain trades will have higher probability than others, and it's trying to refine that down, right? So, let's suppose you start losing, continue losing, and, well, you end in a loss, or you stop at percent before you take a loss. Let's go with the first one first. You start losing. You take a win. You say, okay, so it was just a tiny loss, and you lose. You want to stop at break even? No, it's not. You take a win, then lose. Lost the account. What is it that you do? First of all, you should have stopped at some point, because if you're only taking losses, there's something that you're doing wrong, right? But if you did this, which is something that I hope no one does, because this is not something that you should do, for obvious reasons, if you do lose your account, then there's nothing to do about that account. What you can do is go back at your trades, right? The only problem in this case is that you only took 2 wins in maybe 40 losses, right? 40 losses. There's something that I forgot to add on the notes. Oh, what did I? Oh, I went to my bad. I forgot to add about risk management, so I'm going to have to pause the video and continue later. Okay, doesn't matter. So let me drink some water because otherwise I'm gonna die here. All right, let's go on. So you lost your challenge. What is it that you do now? You have to go through each trade, each trade that you've taken, and realize what is it that you did that, well, not that you did, that the trade did or price action did, that basically made you take a loss in each trade, right? So the only problem with this, with taking every single trade was a loss basically, is that you don't really have anything to compare. But what is it that you do at this point? Supposing that you had the consistency you needed before the challenge, then you go back and you compare to those. If you didn't have the consistency and still took the challenge, then what you do is, for example, go to the Discord channel, you start asking, why did this fail? How could I improve? Or you just go to the charts and backtest in hindsight. In hindsight means that you just go to the price. You say, okay, so price impulse here, was there a trade? Yes, there was a trade. Price basically reacted to this important POI, which comes from reacting to an extreme in the 5-minute, which comes from this, which comes from causing this strong move, blah blah blah, right? So it reacted to an important area. What did price do? Took liquidity, strong impulse down, price came back up to that area that took liquidity, created liquidity and took it, change of character, entry on the confirmation entry. That's how this trade worked out. Okay, so confirmation entry, liquidity, and mitigation in a quite an important area, right? And well, of course, lots of liquidity taken from there, right? You realize that this is a win. You continue to analyze, okay, is there a trade here? No, this failed. Why did it fail? Probably because it's coming from an important area of demand that basically took a lot of liquidity. I really like this area, honestly. I really like this area. Reason why I would have targeted if I would have let the trade run as I should have. But well, I was really happy with 2% profit. So just start looking at price and you start saying, okay, so this trade did worked out, this trade didn't, this trade did, this trade did. You start comparing the trades that have worked out and the trades that you've taken that didn't work out. You realize, okay, so my mistakes are that I take risk entries, that I trade in significant areas, I'm trading areas in the middle. What else? I'm not waiting for liquidity, or I'm taking trades where there is a lot of liquidity against me. I'm taking trades where there's no liquidity taken and no liquidity created before the entry, right? Before the confirmation entry. So I think I should wait for liquidity. I should wait for confirmation entries and liquidity. Okay, let's suppose you start doing that. And in a demo account, of course, you say, okay, so let's see. First trade is a loss. You realize, okay, so this is a good trade with code confluences. It just didn't work out. Maybe the area wasn't important enough. Now take a win. This win covers 6 losses because it was a 6-hard trade. Okay, what did I do right in this trade? How can I continue to repeat this type of trades? And you realize, okay, so it was a liquidity, it price tapped an important area, took a lot of liquidity, created more liquidity, took that liquidity, caused change of character, so that already gives us a potential entry. There's liquidity created before the risk entry, right? Because it's reacting to an area far away, but it's important. The risk entry works out. The confirmation entry created liquidity before. You went for the confirmation entry with the safe stop loss. Trade worked out amazingly, targeting a conservative target, right? It's okay. So again, liquidity, confirmation entry, area important area, right? Okay, let's look for that. This trade fails. You realize, okay, here I made a mistake. I should have waited for a confirmation entry. Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. Let's take a win. How far? We're already at 7.5%, probably 9%. And you took only, 2 losses. That's the power of refinements. that's the power of you realizing what trades work out and what are the mistakes that you're doing. This is something that I did on a daily basis, realizing that I took 3 losses, but there were 4 trades that worked out amazingly in just one trading session. You start realizing that. You're making mistakes. Then what is it that you do? You try to fix those mistakes, right? It's really basic, and it sounds dumb. Sounds dumb, and it is dumb. It's dumb that I wasn't able to realize this when I had, let's suppose this were months of this 2021, right? This was 2021. Let me actually delete everything. Let's suppose this is 2021. This has been my 2021. This is my last quarter. Quarter? Yeah, quarter. This is my last quarter. This is what I did through the year. Had moments of good things, but if I would have realized what I was doing wrong here, and that I got lucky on this, or that I did the things right and then got cocky here, right? Would have been just a much simpler experience this year. But it is what it is, you gotta learn from those mistakes. If things like this didn't happen to me, well, I probably wouldn't learn. And I'm here trying to tell you the mistakes that I made, so you don't have to make those mistakes. You're probably going to copy lots of the mistakes that I've made through this year. And mistakes that I still make to this day. Monday was 4 losses. I broke rules, I traded stupidly, I feared of missing out. I made such dumb mistakes, but what did I do? That same Monday I realized what I did wrong, went straight to Tuesday and made profits. How did I do that? By being patient. Realizing that yesterday I was not patient, I traded stupid areas, I didn't look for liquidity, I didn't look for confirmation entries. And Tuesday I just fixed that. Wednesday, I don't know if there were no trades or if I missed out on a really clean opportunity, probably something missed out on, but I took a loss, but that's fine. I don't mind taking losses. I will take losses, I will continue to take losses, even if I have a 95% probability of taking losses. 95 probability of winning. I will probably have that's 5% of taking losses. Will probably still cause me a headache every once in a while because I might take those 5% losses. 5% of the amount of trades, right? I think you get the point. In just a few days. So sometimes you have a bad streak and that's fine, right? Let's not deviate too much. If you lose your account, hopefully you don't, but if you lose your account, you just gotta realize what you did wrong. There are things that you have to refine, there are things that you have to change. Maybe it's psychological, right? Being in a challenge might be a little bit new, a little bit overwhelming, right? Due to the fact that it's a challenge, it's something that has to challenge you, right? And well, you might feel under pressure with that, and all you have to do at that point is realize that it's all psychological and try to find a way to go through that. There's nothing else you can do but do that, right? Oh god, I wasn't expecting this video to be this large, and I hope you watch it completely because it's a gold mine. This video is a gold mine. I know it's my video, and I have to say that, but this video is a gold mine. Let's continue. Let's say you start losing. You take a loss, take another loss, you don't trade, you take another loss, you take a win. That gives you confidence, right? You go there and they loss. You stop 2% away. You have lost 8% in a week and a half, right? You have lost what you should have won in a week and a half, right? If you were going for MFF. Keep in mind that you have a 12% at MFF and a 10% at FTMO. So you've lost an 8% in a week and a half, right? What are your options at this point? The good thing is that you're stopping and thinking, I can't be losing an 8% in a week and a half. this is not a bad streak. This is something that I'm doing wrong. It's really hard with this type of strategy to lose an 8% in a week and a half by following the strategy by the book, right? Following the steps, doing things correctly. It's really hard to take 8% loss means that you took 16 losses with a 0.5% loss, of course, 0.5% risk. But let's suppose you stop here. You say, I'm not going to trade for the rest of the week. I'm not going to trade for the rest of week 3. And I'm going to try to get back up to break even on week 4. What you do in this week and a half that you have, well, you have 2 weeks and a half, right? But this week and a half, week 2 and 3 should be used entirely to trade in demo, entirely trying to realize what you were taking losses, and what were that 1 or 2 wins that you took, and how can you improve. And again, you repeat the process that I just told you. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing. But basically, you realize what you were doing wrong, you compare it to trades that have worked out, you realize, well, maybe I've been taking just risk entries, and I haven't been waiting patiently for confirmation entries. I try to force trades. I don't wait for liquidity. I don't like waiting. I'm an impatient person. And I am an impatient person. Let's talk about this because this is actually really funny. I'm a very impatient person. I hate when price is impulsing, right? Let's suppose this is a chart. Price impulsing, and it doesn't come back down. Wednesday. This was Wednesday. That was the loss on Wednesday. I forced a trade, and I knew I was forcing the trade, but I wanted to trade a retracement to then get to an important POI, to then buy. Finally getting in that buy. Right? But price never did that. Wednesday was just full impulse and no retracement whatsoever. And I forced a trade, right? This trade didn't work like this. Forced the trade, worked out for a bit, failed, took a loss, stupid loss, right? And I'm a very impatient person. But what I have come to realize is that being patient will make you trade less, which is boring. Not gonna lie, it's boring being patient. But how do you think I've accomplished the profitability that I have right now? I am not a very consistent person. I am not very profitable as many others are. But I'm consistent to a way that I've managed to get my account to 4% profit from a 2% loss, right? So it's 6% profit that I've made in this past week. So this was a really good trade here in the 5-minute. What do I see? Major break. We could even consider this chalk here as a 5-minute change of character. Didn't want to do that. This was a major break, showing somewhat of a lower high kind of scenario in the 5-minute, but the change in the trend in the 5-minute wasn't really good, right? So this cost right here was really good. I was going to place the risk entry on the demo, but I said, you know what? This looks like equal highs. But at the same time, this high went above this high. So we could say that the liquidity from this high was taken. So this is a strong high. I placed the trade, but then I said, price didn't really stop before getting here. You know what? I'm not really gonna trade this. I'm gonna take this as liquidity, probably reaching for this, but still, this was the only liquidity created for this trade. So what did I do? I took the risk entry with the demo. In the demo, I tend to be a little bit more aggressive and look at how it is. 35% profit. Of course, in this one, I risked a 2%, so I got a 20% there out of nowhere. Look at how many losses I've taken. Look at how many losses. I risk a 1% here. I don't know why it's 140 there. I risk a 1% on this account. 1% is not something that I want to risk in a challenge account. It's just a little bit risky. You can, if you want to be really conservative with your trades, you can, because I have taken 1 or 1.5% loss in a day. But if you want to be really conservative, you can. But if you want to be really aggressive and take more than 1 trade per day, then I wouldn't really recommend risking a 1%. So what did I do? I set an alert here. I deleted the alerts, sadly. Alerts log. Tap in extreme, look for CE. Look at that. That's beautiful. And then the trigger. And I had another alert, but apparently it's not. It's not showing. So 8:15 a.m., 8:14, 8:15 a.m. You can see it down here. 8:15. Price taps that area. And I start looking for CE. What do I see? This first reaction, could be taken as liquidity. What does price do? Come back up, ranges a little, nicks the high. That nick on the high, that small movement in the high, that take of liquidity was just beautiful. I was so happy to see that. And I was going to risk a 0.25 on this one due to the fact that it was a supposedly a holiday, so supposedly I was not even going to trade today. And I said, I'm gonna set the alerts, I'm gonna set the trade, I'm gonna set the alerts, and I'm gonna forget about the trade. And trade just beautifully came in here. Would have I gotten the same results, if not better, from this? Definitely. Do I care? No. I don't care, because I waited for the confluences. I waited for the 3 basic steps, if you want to say it that way. Taps an important area, causes something, even took liquidity, created liquidity before the trade, entry on the CE. How hard is that? I think the hard thing is to spot this, to consider this an important area because there's liquidity up here. But price tapped an important area to the left. Price took liquidity. When it takes liquidity and there's liquidity behind, I'm starting to realize that it doesn't really matter. Right? So if it takes liquidity, it's good enough, even if it loses liquidity. But that's subject for another video. So I think it's harder to identify this as a strong area, but I don't think that's hard either. It's probably based on my experience, probably based on the times that I spent in front of the charts, right? But look at the move that it created. Look at the liquidity here, look at the liquidity here. I mean, it just makes sense, right? So step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4, well, profits. Patience is really a wonderful thing. Waiting for CE here, well, you would have taken a loss if you took this, right? But well, that's markup material. I don't know where I was, to be fully honest. So, in this week and a half, you have to realize what you're doing wrong, right? What do you do on the 4th week? You say, you know what? I'm here at an 8% loss. I need to make what will give me the challenge, the pass to the verification phase, right? The pass in the challenge, but to get back up to break even and get a second chance in the 4th week, in just a week. The good thing, and if you get into this situation, hopefully you won't. But if you do, what's good about this is that you have nothing to lose. Of course, you have the challenge to lose, but at this point, the challenge is already lost. You have one win to either get your second chance or just lose something that you kind of already lost at this point, right? So that relief for that pressure that is not there now, right, due to the loss you took, it's actually really relieving. It's a relief for you, right? Because you don't have that pressure. So if you did right and you did what you're supposed to do in this week and a half, 4th week, being patient, just 3 trades should get you back up to break even. 3-4 trades, depending on again also how aggressive you are with your targets and with your entries. If you're aggressive and you go for the 50% of a POI, you could get 20R in a trade that you will usually get maybe 7R, right? But you, of course, you run the risk of being missed out. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it on this one. I'm starting to realize it's actually a really good video. But yeah, challenge is, I think it's more important what you do before the challenge than what you do during the challenge. Of course, during the challenge you do have to get past, right? But getting past is just following your rules, being consistent, being patient, waiting for good trades, and you'll get it. It's not hard to pass the challenge. It's hard to have the psychology and the strength to follow your training plan during the challenge. That's why you look for that consistency. And the the 10-hour target that I set for you for a month is because having a target to get to will challenge you to get to that target, but following your rules. You have to, do this because it doesn't look like a number. You have to get there. You know what I mean? You have to get there. If you have a target to achieve, right? So you have to prove yourself to do it consistently, patiently, and get to that 10 hour, right? It's not trying to find, okay, so it's Monday, I got to get to 10 hour this week, let's find trades. And you go and you start forcing trades, and loss. Now instead of 10 hour, you have to get 16 hour because you took 6 losses. Makes no sense, right? So patiently get into that POI. That 10 hour, you can set it higher if you want, because 10 hour could be quite easy. I mean, this week, if I achieved an 8% profit, that means that I got 16 hour. And I missed out on Monday's trade. I missed out on Monday's trade. That's it. And well, could have gone for larger targets if I wanted to, but that's something that I don't really like to. I don't like holding trades for too long. I don't know. It's a little bit psychology. Right? I do know that psychological, that I don't really trust myself completely in some ways. There's stuff that I'm working on, right, and that need time. But yeah, that's basically pretty much it. And I'll do. So now I'm not gonna do the outro. Here's what I'll do. I'm gonna show you what I do when it comes to preparing yourself for a challenge. Beautiful. Is that? I don't know if that's the way you write it. Beautiful challenge. This is how I prepare myself for a. I wanted to do it here, but it looks awful. This is what I do when I want to prepare myself for a challenge. I got 2 ways: the 0.50% way or the 0.25%. And what is this? This is the risk that you're going to take per trade, right? So, do you want to risk a 1%? Go for it. I wouldn't recommend it at all. I do not see necessary, and that means that you would have 12 trades. Less than 12 trades, because with commissions you would end up maybe taking 10 trades and will end up in a 12% loss. But basically, this is what I do. With a 0.5% profit, if I need to achieve an 8% gain, I need 16 R to get 8%, which is my target. Let's suppose that because of commissions, you need 20 R instead of 60 R, right? To make it a little bit more, not believable, but a little bit more realistic, right? That means that you need 4 take profits at 5R. That's not a lot. You have to look for 4 good trades and close them at 5R in 4 weeks. I'm not saying that you need this in a week, which could be hard to find consistently 4 take profits without taking losses, right? But this is in 4 weeks. If it wasn't just 1 week, then I will tell you, okay, this is a little bit hard. But you need that in 4 weeks. That's crazy. You got a huge amount of time. You could be really conservative, looking for really good trades, and you will get this without taking losses, maybe. That's a huge maybe, right? But being really conservative, you can look for really clean trades that may lead you to a high probability, which could lead you to not take a loss. But I'm not promising a 100% system here, okay? Now, what does it mean to this side? Literally the double. You need 40 R to get to an 8% target, which means that you need 8 take profits at 5R. Is it doable? In 4 weeks, it definitely is. I do not think that this is hard to make. But let's look at the con side. This 0.50% risk means that you have, let's suppose you're doing FTMO, so we'll do with 10%. You have 20 trades. 20 trades. No. Or yes. Yeah, 20 trades. Yeah, 20 trades. You have 20 trades. Sorry, 20 stop losses. Before losing, I think that's double O. Losing FTMO. What I mean with this, if you take 20 stop losses in a row without taking any kinds of wins, you lose your account because that reaches the 10% mark they have, right? That means that, no, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. And in this side, you have 40 stops. Did the color change? Oh no. Before losing FTMO. This all comes back down to risk management, right? In this case, let's suppose you take 2 trades per day or 3 trades per day. That means that you have, well, 20 split by 3. I don't know math. 20 split by 3 will be what? 7 days? A little bit less than 7 days. Let's suppose it's 6 days. 6 days lose. 6 days. In 6 days, that means 6 days straight taking 3 trades per day and taking 3 losses. Now, I'm not gonna lie. This strategy is really good. I have proved to myself that even when I'm trading stupidly bad, you can find a good trade. You can take a good trade when you're doing mistakes, when you're making mistakes. So this is really hard to do. 20 stops in a row is really hard to do, right? It's really hard to do. Right? So if you're trading very stupidly, you're not really following the steps, you are likely to find one trade within this 20 that will boost you up a little. Let's suppose you take a 5% win in that one. That will boost you up enough to, well, get more losses to have, right? And this will mean that you have 12 days to lose the account. 3 per day. That's an awful, eh? Oh. So I think this is something very important because it makes you understand that if you don't trust yourself too much just yet, even though you've shown yourself good consistency through the last month or maybe even a couple of months, the more time you take, the better, right? But if you have proven consistency but you still don't feel comfortable, then start with the 0.25. You have 40 losses before losing your account. 40 losses, and you just need 8 take profits, right? So, this is something really important because you realize what you can do. You have basically 20 opportunities before taking a loss. In this case, you have 40 opportunities, right? So as an example, what I could recommend you to do, as I laid all this, hope you wrote this on your notepad or took screenshots. What that means is that, what was I going to say? Oh, what you could do is create a gap. A gap is basically, as an example, start with 0.25% and gain a 2.5% profit. And then you change to 0.5%. and you at that point you need a 5.5%, 5.5%, which is 11R. Which is 2 trades basically, if I want to be honest, 2 or 3 trades. So what is this? What do I mean with gap? What I mean with gap is that when you start your account, you're at 0, right? You're at 0. This is your lose. This is your win. Right? This is your 12% gain. This is your 10% loss. Sorry, 12% to 8% gain. This is your 12% loss. So when you start winning, this space between the point you're currently on and the break even, that's what I call a gap. Because if you don't feel comfortable and you want to start with a 0.25, then you can. But if you make 10R with 0.25, then now you have 10R, yeah. Well, now you can use that gap to change it to 5%, sorry, to 0.5%, which means that you have 5 opportunities before going back to break even. So let's say you take 3 losses and you say, okay, I'm not feeling comfortable with this risk, so I'm just going to change back up to 0.25, and I continue trading with that. The good thing is that you have created this gap between the point you are and the point of break even, right? So you have opportunities in the middle before losing or going back up to break even, which is what we talked about in the you start winning, make mistakes, and stop at break even, right? So this is something that I could recommend you to do, right? You start little, right? If you see that you're doing really well, then you can change your risk higher, right? As an example, I feel really comfortable with 0.5%. I think you have enough opportunities, right? 20 stop losses is a lot. And as I said, you have to be trading really bad to actually take 20 losses in a row without taking no wins. Right, as an example, if I took 5 losses in a row, I should realize that I'm making a mistake of some sort. Right, so what do? I just analyze the trades. I realize what I'm doing wrong, and I try to change that. Right, simple as that. So that's pretty much risk management. Right, risk management is what keeps us alive. Right, I've proven to you that in this account, and well, I would like to log into the other one because the other one has a really good example. Look at how many losses I've taken. Let's even delete this trade, right? Let's take away this trade. Let's suppose this trade didn't exist. This 21% gain doesn't exist because I risked a 2%. I risked a 2% on this one because I really like the trade and the trade worked out wonderfully. Let's suppose that 2% gain didn't exist. 21%, yes. My account will be at 1100. Well, here, 1100,462. That means that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losses. 7 losses I took are still, and I'm still at 14%, 14.6% profit. I took 7 losses and just 3 wins. I took an 11% on this one and a 10% on this one. By risking a 1%, I do gotta mention that. But the problem here, not the problem, but the thing is here is looking at the risk to reward ratio. The R's are what matter, right? Because if I say that I made 10R, then you can apply that to a 1% risk, to a 5% risk, to a 0.5% risk, whatever it is, right? So in here, I have 11R of profitability. 11R. In a 0.5% risk, that will be a 5.5, right? So risk to reward ratio is what will always keep you alive as soon as you have a good risk to reward ratio, right? If you have a 1 to a 1, then you will need to win more than you lose, and you have a 1 to a 10, you need to win once every 9 losses, right? That's as simple as it is, right? It's something a little bit complicated, of course, because you do need this strategy to support something like that, but it's just very achievable. 1 hour 24 minutes. Okay, so I think that's all that I wanted to talk about here. went through everything that I think is necessary. And challenges are easy to pass, but you need to be prepared. If you're not prepared, you're just going to lose your money. So instead of risking it and say, you know what, I've been having 5 good trades. I've been analyzing well. I've been very patient. I've been doing everything all right. I haven't taken a loss, or I have taken only 2 losses compared to 10 wins. I'm gonna go for it. I suppose you did that in a week. In my opinion, I could tell you, if you asked me, I could tell you that could have been luck. It could have been you being really good at it, definitely. The fact that you get 10 wins your first week is not something bad. It's not that you're being lucky. Maybe you are applying everything correctly. Maybe you are doing everything as you're supposed to, and you are ready for the challenge. But I would still recommend you to go a couple of more weeks. Go a couple more weeks with that consistency, and then I would even tell you, okay, so if you maintain that consistency to a whole month, buy that 400k account on FTMO right now, because you're gonna be rich, right? But if you had just 1 week of that really good consistency, I wouldn't really recommend you going for a challenge. Because let's go back to my example. If I was profitable with 2 trades, one at 30R and the other one at 40 or 20, I don't remember what it said. What was I going to say? If I would have allowed those trades to run, 40R at a 0.5% is 20% profit. And I was, imagine applying those 2 trades in a funding account. Let's just use a 100k account. 20% gain is $20,000. In my country, maybe in the US or in whatever country you live at, it's not that much. But in my country, $20,000 allowed you to live. Let's suppose you need $400 to live in Argentina monthly, which is a little bit high, 400, sorry. But it's definitely achievable. Definitely achievable. That's 20k. Let's use the calculator for this because I'm not good at math. I hate math. Sorry. 20,000 split by 400. That's 50 months. 50 months that you can live in Argentina with 1 month, with 1 trade. It's just unbelievable. And well, if you live in the UK or somewhere that you have to use dollars to live, I think that $3,000 are good enough. Well, that wouldn't allow you as much as it does to me as an example, but you live 6 months, 6.5, almost 7, right? Risk to reward ratio is really all that you need. Risk to reward ratio is what maintains you in the game. If you don't have a good risk to reward ratio, you're going to lose your account, because risking a 10% per trade, that means that 10 losses, you lose your entire account, right? And 10 losses are possible with a bad streak. Maybe you're not even making mistakes, but the market's just not giving you opportunities. 10 losses are possible. I don't really think so. I don't really think that could happen if we're going really patient and waiting for good trades and everything. I don't think that's possible. But it's definitely a possibility, right? I wouldn't believe that could happen to me right now in the way that I've been trading lately, but I do definitely think that it could happen, right? So yeah, I'm going to cut it here. If I think there's something that I've missed out on, which I don't think so, I'll definitely do an extra. But this was huge. I know it's large. I'll have to partition it so you can go to the parts that you're interested. But I hope you watched it completely at your time. I'm not saying that you have to sit down 1 hour and a half taking notes and listening to me, because that's probably very irritating. But this video is a literal gold mine. I'm not funded yet, so that doesn't really give me much credibility, but I think that if you follow the steps that I've given you, I don't think there's a way for you to fail that challenge. But well, I can't make that promise. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, hope you took something away from it, and I'll be seeing you on to the next one.